Hello, my name is Hope and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make this super cute star sweater. So for starters, this pattern is definitely beginner friendly. It's a made to measure pattern, and believe it or not, but this pattern actually works up really fast. So getting into the supplies, you're going to need stitch markers, a darning needle, some scissors, and a 5mm hook. And for the yarn, you're going to need a weight for yarn. Today I'm going to be using the Big Twist Twinkle in the shade Yellow and one in the shade Mint. So making sure you have all of your supplies, we're going to go ahead and get into it. To start, we're going to make a slip knot. To do so, you're going to wrap the yarn around your finger to create an X and take your hook up under that first loop, grab the second loop, and pull it through. Once the yarn is slipped off of your fingers, you're just going to pull tight so that that loop tightens onto the hook. Now we're going to go ahead and start making our star panels. You're going to chain 4, and this is going to replace doing a magic ring. And that finishes up our chain of 4. Now you're going to make a slip stitch into that first chain to make a loop. It's a little hard to see, but we're going to be working our stitches into that center of the loop, and we're going to start off by chaining 3, and this does count as a double crochet. Now you're going to place 19 more double crochets into the center of that loop. And as you work around placing your double crochets, it will be easier to crochet over the tail end as you go so that you don't have to do as much sewing in when we go to sew in that end. So from here, you're going to continue placing your double crochets until you have a total of 20, and I will meet you back at the end. When you reach the end of this round, what you're going to do is slip stitch to the top of that chain 3 from the beginning of the row. And that completes the first official round. Moving on to round 2, we're going to start by chaining up 3, and this does count as a double crochet, and into that same space you're going to place 2 more double crochets. Next, you're going to chain 3 and place another 3 double crochets back into that same space. So that finishes up the first corner of the star. Next, what we're going to do is skip a stitch and then place a single crochet into the following stitch. And just to be clear, it is a little hard for some people to notice, but this right here is the stitch that you're going to skip, and then into that next one you're going to place the single crochet. Now you're going to skip another stitch and place another corner of 3 double crochets, chain 3, and another 3 double crochets. And that just finished up the second corner. And we're going to repeat the same pattern all the way around until we reach the end. So it's going to be a corner of a cluster of 3 double crochets, chain 3, another cluster, then you're going to skip a stitch, place a single crochet into the following stitch, skip a stitch, and do another corner. And you're just going to repeat this whole process all over again until you reach the end of this round. So when you reach the end of the round, you should be left with 3 stitches, and what you're going to do is skip one, place a single crochet into the next, and then slip stitch to the top of that chain 3 space to close off the round. And now you're finished with the second row. To begin your third round, what you're going to do first is slip stitch over 1 space, and from there you're going to chain up 3, and this does count as a double crochet. Next, you're going to place a double crochet into the next stitch, and in the corner where the chain 3 spaces, you're going to place 3 double crochets, chain 3, and another 3 double crochets. Now that we just finished with the corner stitches, we're going to move on and place a single double crochet into the next 2 stitches. And that just finishes off one corner of the star. So now one of the 5 points are finished. Now we're going to move on to what I call the valley. This is going to be the stitches that we skip over right here. We're going to skip over 3 stitches and place a double crochet into the next 2. And now you're going to go ahead and do your corner stitches, which is going to be a cluster of 3 double crochets, chain 3, and another cluster of 3 double crochets. And just remember, that's going to be the same thing we do for every corner of this pattern in each row. That makes 2, and now I just have 1 more to go. And that finishes up the corner. Into the next 2 stitches, I'm going to place a double crochet, and after that I'm going to skip over the valley. So you're just going to repeat the same pattern all the way around, and you're going to meet me back at the very end. To finish off this row, what we're going to do is slip stitch to the top of the 3rd chain of the beginning of this row. And that finishes up that round 3. And now what we're going to do is move on to round 4, and it's going to be very similar to round 3. So we're going to start off by slip stitching over 1. And you're going to go ahead and chain up 3. Now that does count as a double crochet, and into the next 3 stitches we're going to place a double crochet. This makes 2 and 3. So now we are making it to the corner space where you're going to do a cluster of 3, chain 3, and another cluster of 3. And that finishes up the corner. So what's different about this pattern, for this row, instead of skipping over 3 stitches in the valley, we're going to skip over only 2. So into the next 4 stitches, you're going to place a double crochet. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now we're going to only skip over the 2 stitches and continue making our double crochets and working our corner stitches. And now we've made it to the corner. You're just going to do your usual corner stitches of a cluster of 3, chain 3, and a cluster of 3. And you're just going to repeat this same pattern all the way around the star until you make it to the end. Now to close off this round, we're going to slip stitch to the top of the chain of the beginning of the row. Now that's going to be the exact same pattern we do for the rest of the star panels, but I'm going to go ahead and show you how I do a color change. So you're able to make this pattern in any colors that you want, as many colors as you want, and whatever color pattern you want. So for starters, what we're going to do is chain 1 and fasten off this color. And you're going to want to pull tight on that tail end to make sure it's not going to come undone. Now go ahead and grab your second color of yarn, and I'm going to show you how to attach it to your project and then crochet over that tail end so you don't have to sew in a million ends later. So have your yarn and hook in hand. And what we're going to do is skip over this first stitch, because that's the one we end up skipping, and go directly into this second stitch right here. We're going to insert our hook and pull our yarn through, just like so. And then what I like to do is just knot it on to the project. You can just do a simple 2 knots. That's 1. And there's the second one. And that'll make sure the yarn is secure. Now what we're going to do is just continue working up our rows like usual, but also working over those tail ends as we go. So just grab the 2 tail ends and pull them off to the side. And you're gonna kind of just hold them to the back of the stitches like this. Now to continue, what you're going to do is insert your hook into that stitch we attached the yarn to. Then you're going to chain up 3. And now what you're going to do is place a double crochet into each of these stitches until we reach the corner. And once you finish with those double crochets, you're going to move on to doing your corner stitches, which is going to be a cluster of 3 double crochets, chain 3, and another cluster of 3 double crochets. And again, just make sure you are crocheting over those tail ends, because you're not going to want to spend the time sewing in all those ends later. Once you're done with your corner, you're just going to keep placing your double crochets until you reach the valley, and you're only going to skip these 2 stitches and then continue doing your double crochets and then working your corner stitches. And these are the 2 stitches you'll be skipping and then working the rest of the double crochets into those following stitches. And you're just going to go ahead and keep working these increase rounds for the star until the panel is big enough to reach from the top of your outer shoulder to the opposite shoulder. Because we're going to end up making 2 panels to sew them together to make a top, and then I'm going to show you how to make the sleeves. So go ahead and work up both your panels, and then I'm going to meet you back here at the end. So here are both of my panels finished. And you're going to want to have your panels put together. You're going to want the right sides facing out on both of the panels. So if you look at the insides of the stars where we have the center tail ends poking out, you're going to want those to be touching each other. So now what we're going to do is grab our stitch markers, and we're going to go ahead and clip the panels together where we're going to be placing our sleeves. So at the top of your panel, you're going to want to clip both of the chain 3 spaces together on both sides. So that is one done. And now I'm going to go ahead and clip the other side. So now we have both finished. Now grab your other 2 stitch markers, and we are going to go ahead and pin the 2 valley stitches together, and that's going to be the bottom of the sleeve. So we're going to end up crocheting around this entire portion right here on both panels to create a long sleeve. For a little bit of a visual, this right here is going to be the arm sleeve hole. To begin working up our sleeves, what we're going to do is attach our yarn, and it's best to do it at the bottom in my opinion because you can work over your tail ends and the seam is not noticeable at all. And that finishes the double knot, and what I'm going to do is just pull that tail end to the side because I'm going to work over it so then I don't have to do all that work with sewing in all the ends. So once you insert your hook, start off by chaining 3. Now making sure you crochet over that tail end, we're going to double crochet into each stitch until we make it to the next stitch marker. Now we're just going to go ahead and double crochet the 2 corners together with 1 stitch. And from there, you're going to continue placing your double crochets into each stitch all the way around until you reach the end of this row. To close off this round, you're going to simply place a slip stitch into the top chain of the beginning of the row. Now you're going to go ahead and chain 3 and turn your work. And then you're going to go ahead back around and place a double crochet into each stitch until you finish this row. And again, this chain 3 does count as a double crochet. And to close off the round, all you're going to do is slip stitch to the top chain of the beginning of the row. Moving on to the next round, I'm going to go ahead and fasten off and switch colors. Then you're going to go ahead and turn your work. And from here, you can already see how this is going to work the sleeve. The more rows you put, the longer the sleeve is going to get. It's also very versatile because you can do different stitches for your rows. You don't have to do double crochets or triple crochets like I'm doing. So now I'm going to go ahead and attach my yarn and do a double knot. Now that I changed colors, the pattern's going to be for the rows, double crochet row, triple crochet row, double crochet row. So for this row, I'm chaining up 3 and placing a double crochet into each stitch all the way around. And like usual, I'm just going to slip stitch to the beginning of the row. Now for the next row, I'm going to go ahead and chain up 6, and that does count as a triple crochet and a chain 2 space. Now turn your work. And what you're going to do is skip 2 stitches and place a triple crochet into the 3rd stitch. Once finished, you're going to chain 2, skip 2 stitches, and then place a triple crochet into the 3rd stitch. And you're just going to repeat this all the way around and meet me back at the end. So we've made it to the end, and you're gonna see I have 2 stitches left to skip over. Sometimes there might be 3. You're just gonna ignore that 3rd stitch and pretend it's only 2. So what we're going to do is slip stitch into the 4th chain right here to close off the round. And that finishes off your triple crochet row. So what we're gonna do next is chain up 3, and we're gonna turn our work. So in this row, it's going to be a double crochet row. At the chain 2 spaces, we're going to place 2 double crochets, and at the triple crochet space, we're going to place a single double crochet. And you're just going to repeat that all the way around until you reach the end of this row. When you reach the end of the row, you're just going to do a slip stitch to close it off. And everything we just did, we're going to just keep repeating. So it's going to be a double crochet row, a triple crochet row, and a double crochet row. So you're just going to want to repeat that until you reach the length of your sleeve, till it reaches about your wrist, because if you're using acrylic yarn, it will stretch some and become a bit longer when it softens up. And just keep in mind, everything you do to the first sleeve, you need to do to the second sleeve. So I'm going to finish this up and I will meet you back when I'm done with both. Now you can see I am finished with both sleeves. And I literally love the way these stitches look together. It's just so flowy, it works up fast. And if you make this sweater the way I showed you, there's very, very minimal ends to sew in. So all that's left is sewing the neckline a little bit so that it doesn't fall off your shoulders unless you want the off the shoulder look. You'll just simply sew 10 of the stitches together on both sides, about 10 to 12. And then all we have to do after that is sew together our side panels. And all we're gonna do is these little bits right here. And we're gonna do the same thing on both sides. So go ahead and grab your darning needle and your yarn. You're going to want to thread that yarn onto your darning needle, and we're going to sew this side up. So the way I like to sew the sides, let me zoom in a little bit. I like to pick up the outer loops of the panels instead of all 4. And you're going to be going from the valley all the way to the corner seam. So here's the one, and then you're going to want to pick up that other outer loop. So you're only going to be picking up 2 of the loops, and you're just going to repeat this all the way down. Again, just continue sewing down this side of the panel, and I will meet you back at the end. So now I have made it to the end, and I'm just going to loop the thread to secure it and then sew in the ends. And all that's left is to repeat this to the other side of the star sweater, and then sew in all of your ends. And if you choose to sew up the sides of the neckline a little bit so that it's not an off the shoulder look, that's all you have left to do, and then you are officially done. And then here's the final look. And please do let me know what you want the next tutorial to be, and if you do end up making this, please tag me because I would love to see. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.